Hello everyone. I hope everything is great. In last video we learned the basics of CSS, history of CSS, syntax and how we include a CSS or a style in the HTML file. So if you did not watch that video, you can check the link in the description section. I will provide the earlier video link in the description section. Okay, so let's start. Today we discuss the priority of these three type of CSS include in HTML. So as you know, we can include CSS in the external form, in the internal form, and also in the tag form, which we call the inline CSS, like this. So what is the case that we discussed today? See, like I have option to apply CSS in this h1 tag, then same I can select it from the internal CSS and same tag we can access from the external CSS. So if an element have the CSS same for all three places, then what will happen? तो क्या होगा उस टाइम अगर सेम CSS एक एलिमेंट के लिए तीनों जगह पर लगी हुई है, like right, we implemented this for the inline CSS, internal CSS and external CSS. Let's create one scenario here. I add the style color GREEN green. So I use the red, green and blue pattern. Then what I did, I simply select it from the internal CSS and define the color red. Then in external CSS, select the h1 and give color blue. Let me save this CSS, save the HTML file, go to browser and refresh. What will happen? The color of the inline CSS take precedence. The inline CSS priority is the highest, so the color green will be reflected in the file. Okay, let me remove one by one. First I remove this CSS, save file and refresh. What happened? So this will take the color blue, and color blue we define in the external CSS here. Okay, now what about the internal CSS? Let me remove this CSS from the external file, save this, refresh here. And now the color of this heading element is the red, as you can see. So if we discuss this, what is the case? Highest priority of CSS that is applied into any HTML element is the inline CSS. Inline CSS have the highest priority. Then as we see now, first the external and then the internal CSS have. Okay, now there is one another case for external and internal. As you can see in head section, first I define the style tag for the internal CSS, and then we link the external CSS by using the link keyword. So let me did one thing here. I select from here color blue, save this, refresh this file, and the blue color will be shown. That means external CSS takes the highest uh, priority than the internal CSS. Now what I did, I remove this link tag from here, and first I add this link tag and then add the internal CSS. Now what will happen? Let's go to the browser and check. Oh, as you can see, the now internal CSS take the highest priority than the external CSS. So what is the exact case for internal and external CSS is that it depends how we add these CSS in the head section. If we add the external CSS first and then the internal, then internal CSS take the highest priority. And uh, if we add the external CSS after the internal, then external CSS take the higher priority. So now I think you can understand the exact priority of the inline CSS, external CSS, and internal CSS. Now there is one another keyword which is important. Let's discuss the use of this keyword and how we can use this. Okay, so there may be a case like in your project, some element have this inline CSS. Now what is the case? Inline CSS have the highest priority, so it does not matter how internal and external CSS are added, always the inline CSS take the precedence than the internal and external. Now what is the case if some HTML file have this inline CSS and we have only access the external CSS or internal access? We don't have the access of this element and we need to change the color of this element. How we can do that? We can do this by adding the important keyword. Now let's see by adding this keyword. So currently the highest precedence will be of the inline CSS. Let me go to the internal CSS and add one keyword here which is the important. Now what it's mean? It means that internal CSS take precedence because this property have the importance. So now it overrides the inline CSS priority. Let's refresh here and you can see the inline CSS take the precedence and red color shown here. Okay, same thing, same keyword we can add into external CSS, and we can also use this in inline CSS, but that does not make any sense because inline CSS already have the highest priority. So what I did in the head section, I first add the external CSS and then I add the internal CSS. So in normal flow, the internal CSS take the highest priority. But what I did, I removed this from here and go to the external CSS and add this keyword here. Oh, sorry, I think I did not copy that. Let me add it manually. So color blue and important. Save both the files. If we can check in the HTML, first we add the external CSS, then internal CSS, then inline CSS. So for this flow, the inline CSS need to be take the highest priority, then the internal CSS will take the priority, and at the last external CSS. But we add the important keyword in the external CSS, so this property will take the highest priority instead of the internal and inline CSS. Let me go to browser and refresh here, and you can see the blue color which is written in the external CSS will take the highest priority, and this color will be reflected in the browser. So that's all about the priority of external, internal, and internal inline CSS, and as well as the important keyword. So for this video, that's all. Let's discuss another point in next video. Thanks and bye bye.